I am an 8 mana, 8/20 with Vigilance and Ward 3. Kira.
Hi, I'm the third cheap white creature that shocks you. Maya.
And it's here. It's today.
It's final E here?
Final E here. It is the pre-release of the Universes Beyond Magic the Gathering X Final Fantasy standard legal set.
Do you reckon that X is a kiss?
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Certainly a chef's kiss,
It
right?
does feel like Wizards is kissing Final Fantasy on the mouth with this one.
Hi, Dan.
It's here. It's real. Months and months of anticipation have led us to today. Welcome, standard players, modern players, Magic players of all. Final Fantasy is now here, and it is now available at a game store near you.
It's true.
It's true. It's here. It's real. I'm in shock. This is, Maya, the best-selling Magic the Gathering set in Magic's history.
Why does that not surprise me?
Did you ever play Final Fantasy when you were growing up?
I cannot describe to you how little of an understanding or experience of Final Fantasy I have. Not only did I not play it, until it got released, I think I had heard the name once. I was
Really?
tangentially aware of its existence from other friends who played Magic.
Gotcha. I remember I briefly attempted to play Final Fantasy VII because that's the Final Fantasy with Cloud Strife in it. That's the only thing that I know about Final Fantasy.
Is he a famous husbando or something?
Yes, he's the blonde one with the giant sword.
Sure. I just assumed he was in all of them.
Well, that is honestly, like, that's the thing that always surprised me the most is that the characters are not consistent throughout. It's like, listeners, neither of us are Final Fantasy aficionados, but we are Magic aficionados. And this is a standard legal Universes Beyond set. It is the first standard legal Universes Beyond set that Wizards has created. And we're feeling all kinds of ways about it. We're feeling all kinds of up, down, left, right, sideways, diagonal, snakes and ladders kinds of ways. But there surely is going to be an impact on the format. And so today, as we've been doing the last few set releases, we're going to be walking you through some of our watch out for picks, things that we've had a bit of a look at. We're using some of that standard training that Ben has instilled in us to look out for cards that we think are either going to fit in a pre-existing deck shell or cards that are going to lead to new strategies and new archetypes being developed with the release of this set.
Or just shit we think's cool.
Also stuff that we just think is cool, because this is actually a pretty mechanically interesting set. The way that Wizards has designed this set is really cool. We have saga creatures now, which is really interesting, as well as we have, again, everything is either kicker or horsemanship, and we have a bunch of really interesting kicker spells that you can, similar to the spree mechanic in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, you can pay extra costs to get the spells to do more or bigger things the more times you kick them. So this set is really cool, and it's here now. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, 100%. We're gonna take it in turns a little bit because we're both pretty excited to talk about quite a few of the cards that are here. And you know, as I will defer, of course, to you, Kira. What are the first couple of cards you're going to be talking about?
The first card that I'm going to be talking about is the Husbando.
I
have to talk about the Husbando
Crazy.
First, I'm talking about Cloud Midgar Mercenary. It is a white legendary creature, human soldier mercenary. Has the ability, when Cloud enters, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. As long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. And he's a 2/1. There is only one equipment you are fetching with Cloud.
I would love to know what that is.
It's the Buster Sword.
Oh.
No, it's not. It's Corey Steelcutter. Of course it's Corey Steelcutter.
Of course.
It's Corey Steelcutter.
I did not see this. I read this as the worst Stoneforge mystic.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And I was like, I did not clock. You see, in my mind, Corey Steelcutter is not an equipment. It's a 2-mana emblem. It's of course it's a
So There have been, in the past, a few Boros equipment decks. Usually it's the Mice package, and it's relying on Mabel to have Cragflame. Occasionally you've seen this list also with Leyline Axe. But Cloud plus Corey Steelcutter is a match made in what I would call standard hell. I think this is going to be a horrific combo. Horrifically good, that's up to you to decide. But
sure, like copies 5 through 8 of Corey Steelcutter are probably still good.
It's probably
right?
still really good. The ability to search your library for an equipment is going to make this really powerful. This is also a deck I see that does play Corey Steelcutter and Leyline Axe. The reason, though, that this is going to be so good is because of Corey Steelcutter's flurry ability. As long as Corey Steelcutter is equipped to Cloud, that ability will trigger twice, and it's going to start dumping out even more 1/1 monks with prowess.
Yeah, that is pretty good. It is pretty mana intensive, though. Equipping Corey Steelcutter to Cloud is a non-zero cost in a deck that is capable of casting both Corey Steelcutter and Cloud.
This is true. And that's why we're going to be looking also in this shell at equipment cost reduction cards. I'll put it on the screen here now that there is a card. Wow, look at that. There's a card that once each turn you equip costs are reduced.
Sure.
And so that
this set
helps.
is also an equipment matters set.
Equipment matters.
The Boros mechanics in this Final Fantasy set, in the limited environment and outside of it, I expect, are reasonably equipment focused. And I believe there are already cards within the set that reduce the cost of equip. Yeah, I can definitely see it.
I see this card doing really well in a Boros Little Shitters deck. In
Little Shitters,
your
nice.
Delny Arabella, because also Delny, your abilities of creatures with power 2 or less trigger an additional time. There's a lot happening.
There sure is. It strikes me as a little slow, but Corey Steelcutter is just kind of the most broken card in Standard right now, and I think even as copies 5 through 8 of Corey Steelcutter, this card at a baseline is already pretty strong. The fact that it does have that additional utility of the equip alongside being able to search for your, one of Lava Spur Boots or something like that means that this card is likely to see at least some amount of play.
2 mana tutor for a Corey Steelcutter is pretty good.
2 mana tutor for a Corey Steelcutter is in fact quite good.
Additionally, look, when we're looking at our heuristics, looking at Cloud as well, dies to cut down, dies to torch the tower. There are a lot of ways in which Cloud is one of those quintessential 2 mana your opponent discards a removal spell.
Sure, but I actually disagree with you on this point because it's card advantage if that happens because you have searched for the equipment. It doesn't fall into that same category as the creature that is good on board but dies to removal.
Yeah.
Is just a 1/1 because it replaces itself and replaces itself with a very powerful card. I think you are happy 100% of the time your opponent spends literally any amount of mana or resources removing it.
It does have that benefit of giving you the card, and also not just giving you a card like Up the Beanstalk replaces itself by drawing a card. You get to choose the card with Cloud, and that already is a massive advantage.
Temporary lockdown stonks continue to rise.
I love Temporary Lockdown. I've loved that card this whole time. Now look, what kind of deck will we see from this? I'm not entirely sure. It is going to really depend on the cards that support the archetype, because Boros equipment isn't something that I would even really consider tier 2. It's probably tier 3 at this point. And so
yeah, it's probably a fringe deck, right?
How much Cloud is going to impact that? I would say a lot. Again, as this, Corey Steelcutter 5, 6, 7, and 8, it is really powerful, and it's probably going to push that deck over the edge, as we've said with fringe decks needing just, occasionally 1 or 2 cards of support to push it into that from tier 3 to tier 2 category. I'm really curious to see how Cloud impacts this format and especially affects equipment as an archetype. The ability to tutor up exactly what you're looking for, and the ability to tutor up the best equipment in the game right now.
The best card in Standard by far. Yeah, a little
bit. I'm really excited for it. And look, everyone loves a bit of husbando. Everyone likes a little bit of husbando. I'm happy to see him. He's one of the few Final Fantasy characters that I recognize as a non-Final Fantasy player. And so I think it's really fun that they've given him, this really strong ability. Obviously, I think flavor-wise, what would you want to search up? The Buster Sword, of course.
Sure. I'm sure a lot of Commander players will be doing
I'm
just
sure
that.
they will be doing exactly that. But short of that, I'm really curious to see how this card impacts Boros equipment as a whole, potentially even mono-white equipment. You, of course, lose a lot of the effectiveness of... You lose Corey's Steel Cutter, first of all, and that's probably the most important thing. But there are lots of ways in which I think mono-white can be quite strong, especially if you're going to lean into the Delny aspect. But I think you lose a lot of the core components of what makes the deck so strong and so aggressive.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how it affects Standard for sure.
So
My turn.
Maya, it's time for a tangent.
So the way I'm going to approach talking about cards is I'm going to talk about them in categories, kind of referring to the decks or the ideas that they represent. And the first one is going to be Agatha's Soul Cauldron.
Sure. Good deck.
I'm going to start by saying every time they print a set, Soul Cauldron obviously is going to get better. That card is really good. The more they print cards that you can exile into Agatha's Soul Cauldron, the better that card is going to be.
Yeah.
There is infinite hype potential for this card. I am also bad at assessing Agatha's Soul Cauldron cards, so, I'm going to add the caveat of a grain of salt. But I wanted to talk about two cards in regards to Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and I'll rattle them off very quickly for you. The first one is Go-Go, Master of Mimicry. And just a reminder, I don't play Final Fantasy. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it.
I don't know who this is.
It is 2 and a blue for a legendary creature wizard. It has the abilities XX, tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control X times. You may choose new targets for the copies. This ability can't be copied, and X cannot be 0. And mana abilities can't be targeted. This is because they don't use the stack. And it is a 2/4. And the other card I want to talk about is Vivi Ornitier, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
It sounds French. I think that's correct.
Yeah, Ornitier.
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 Vivi Ornitier. There's gonna be plenty of Final Fantasy people like screaming at us.
Oh,
in the
absolutely! It's going
comments
to be wonderful. Vivi is 1 blue red for a legendary creature wizard. Has the activated ability 0 as a cost. Add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivi Ornitier's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi Ornitier, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent.
That card is busted.
The card is very, very good, and it's very, very good when all your creatures have it.
And that's what makes Soul Cauldron so good in this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I see where you're going with this.
In my mind, these two cards combine really well.
Yeah.
Because it means each of your creatures add mana, and they add enough mana that they can then activate the Go-Go ability to create additional triggers of whatever it is you're copying. And there are a lot of activated and triggered abilities in the Agatha's Soul Cauldron deck, right? The deck that I'm thinking of specifically is the Agatha's Soul Cauldron Insidious Roots deck. And what this combination of cards does is it lets the Insidious Roots deck go from kind of like a linear growth scale to an exponential growth scale. Because every time you untap with any number of plants with counters on them, every time you generate another trigger, you get to copy that trigger for each of the plants you have in play and generate a large amount of blue or red mana while you're doing it. And it's just incredibly powerful.
I feel sick.
Notably, the Go-Go activated ability can trigger the reflexive ability from Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which puts +1/+1 counters on creatures. So if you have creatures that are in play without counters, you can put counters on multiple of the creatures while only having to exile 1 card with Agatha's Soul Cauldron by copying the reflexive trigger. So it adds a level of like explosive combo potential to this deck that this deck did already have, but not quite to the same level. Also, when you're adding near infinite mana, it becomes very easy to kill your opponent with something like Fireball, or a creature that has some sort of similar effect. You know, the one that jumps to my mind because I'm an old woman is Valakut Invoker, the style of effect where you can pump mana to generate damage. This seems interesting to me. The Roots deck is already very efficient and very scary. It has a lot of kind of very well-contained parts. I think this is kind of closer to an explosive combo version of the deck if this does sort of see play, which I think it's likely to in a fringe setting, I'm curious as to how good it will be. There's a lot of graveyard hate running around at the moment, which does make this sort of deck worse. But adding mana for free is always very, very powerful. Copying abilities is always very, very powerful. I'm excited to see where it goes.
The other thing about these two creatures is that they do dodge a lot of removal. Go-Go is a 2/4, so...
Respectfully, you're never casting these cards. These are going straight in the graveyard and straight under your cauldron.
Well, I'm also still thinking, look, eventually, in some way, if you do stick either of these cards, it's very easy to protect either of them. Go-Go is a 2/4, so it dodges cut down, which very important. It gets around Torch the Tower, Burst Lightning, Lightning Strike. Misses a lot with the 4 toughness is very important, as Ben has pointed out to us before.
It requires a hard kill spell, something like a Go for the Throat or a Momentum Breaker.
Shoot the Sheriff, anything like that. And Vivi has the benefit of tricking your opponent into using the, Torch the Tower with Bargain, and then you just cast your Opt in response and you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah, or if they do it on your end step, you activate Vivi and use that mana to cast the Opt and put a counter on it.
Well, look, the
actually,
reason...
no, it's a 0/3. That doesn't work.
So
Ignore
exactly,
me.
I was actually just about to point that out, that one of the reasons I think that they've done very well with Vivi is that you cannot activate the ability immediately because it is an 0/3. You have to put a little, literally 1 mana more into it before you kind of see that net neutral, right? You need to opt once to put a +1/+1 counter on there. You scry 1, draw a card, and then you can activate Vivi and get another blue or a red. And you've net neutraled the mana that you spent on Opt. And that, I think, is amazing. I'm really impressed with the design of this creature in specific, because it requires just that little bit more of effort. But as you said, in a Soul Cauldron style deck, barely worried about that. You are barely worried about that because with the way that Insidious Roost functions is that you've got these plant tokens that have counters on them. It gets real yucky real quick. I'm really excited because this does feel like a critical mass deck. And I'm excited to see where that goes.
Notably, most of the pieces in this deck as well aren't rotating.
Yes.
You still have Agatha's Soul Cauldron post-rotation. You still have Insidious Roots post-rotation, which are kind of the core cards. And you still have a bunch of ways to mill yourself. You still have Overlord of the Baelmerk. You still have the one from Aether Drift that I forget the name of. The deck isn't dying anytime soon, but some of its main competitors may be pushed out of the format due to rotation. So I think it'll be interesting. But that's enough rambling from me for now.
Yes.
Kira, talk to me about the next card you're interested in.
The next card that I want to talk about is another 1 mana spell. But it's a 1 mana spell on the surface, and I reiterate yet again that everything is either Kicker or Horsemanship, and this is Kicker.
Hey, look, it's worth Spree. Tell me about Restoration Magic.
Restoration Magic is a 1 white instant, and it has Tiered, which is this new multi-kicker, but not multi-kicker because you can only pick one.
It's a Spree-like mechanic, shall we say.
Yes, it's similar to Spree, but unlike with Spree where you can choose multiple modes of Spree, with Tiered, you can only choose one additional mode. Now, Restoration Magic, 1 white, Tiered, instant. The first tiered ability is Cure for an additional cost of 0. Target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Has a second tiered ability, Cura, for 1. Target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 3 life. And the third tiered ability is Curaga for 3 and a white. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 6 life. Now, the reason that I think Restoration Magic, and frankly a lot of the other, because there's a whole series of this style of tiered card in each of the colors. The reason that I think cards like this are so powerful is their use throughout a game of Magic. This is not an instant where if you draw it late in the game, it's a bad draw. There is, in general, as far as I see it, always going to be a way to play this spell. Of course, the way that I look at it initially is it's a 1 white savior, an important creature spell. This is a 1 white savior cloud. This is a 1 white save your Heartfire hero. I see this card seeing the most play in a Boros aggro deck, where it is looking to protect key creatures, key aggressive creatures throughout a game. I also see it in a Boros tokens style deck. I think the Curaga ability to protect everything as a final push. I really like this spell, and especially a lot of the tiered abilities, the first tier additional cost is 0, and there is some minor, some would say. I think Restoration Magic is the best, has the best 0 tiered cost out of all of them.
I'm going to jump in.
Please jump.
And I'm going to be a terrible, horrible naysayer.
Oh, go on.
I think this card's bad.
You think this card's bad?
That's not true. I think this card is good. I think this card is bad in this current standard format because all the interaction around it doesn't interact with it at all. This card is really good maybe as a sideboard against a red aggressive deck. I think the best mode of this is actually Kura. I think the Hexproof and Indestructible and Gain 3 Life does a really good job of kind of being versatile enough to stop your mono red opponent interacting with you and getting that final push. But in terms of protecting creatures, the kind of key removal spells in this format are Temporary Lockdown, which this card does not interact with, and Nowhere to Run, which this card does not interact with. I think you're going to have a hard time telling me this card is good until those cards rotate.
Sure. Well, luckily,
Dustmourne's not rotating.
Temporary Lockdown is rotating.
Temporary Lockdown is rotating. Not thankfully. It's going to make the format horrible. I just want more Esper picks.
I'm just happy that Shieldred's rotating.
I am also happy that Shieldred's rotating. That's great.
I'm curious to see where these tiered cards fit into, because what I like so much about them is the ability to scale up. I think I would actually very much agree with you. I think especially with Nowhere to Run in the format, this becomes a more difficult card. But I think how many decks play Nowhere to Run?
Yes, 2 of the most highly represented decks in the format.
Stop saying no to me.
Also in the sideboard of Dimir and Mono Black. This card gets Is It Prowess real good. I'll give you that.
Look. I'm looking at this card. I'm gently stroking my phone screen here. I'm looking at this card as a way to get around Corey Steelcutter.
Sure.
Because I do think...
Play a Braid.
Play Suplex. I like this card. And again, a lot of the cards that I picked out are these cheap 1 mana interaction spells. And again, I think the benefit of this cheap 1 mana interaction is the ability to scale up. And it scales up better than something like Torch the Tower. Torch the Tower has 1 step up. This has 2 steps up. And I think that makes it a little bit stronger. They fill very different roles, don't get me wrong. They fill completely different roles. It's not as though this is like a 1-to-1 comparison. This is very much apples and oranges. But I think that scaling up really does help this spell.
I will say, for what it's worth, I think tiered is a lot better than Spree. Because the tiered design allows the design space to have these very cheap options like Cure and like the deal 1 damage to each creature. And I think that efficiency is good. All right. Now this next one is going to take some convincing.
Why? This is a good card.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
Listeners, the next card is Astrologian's Planisphere. It is a 1 and a blue artifact equipment.
You can find it with Cloud.
It has Job Select. And Job Select, I assume, has some relevance to Final Fantasy as a role-based game where you have a job.
It's mini for Mirrodin is what it is.
It is a different version of for Mirrodin. Job Select says, when this equipment enters, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature is a wizard in addition to its other types and has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell and Whenever you draw your third card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature.
Yeah, I didn't read the first half of the sentence. This card's great.
It has Diana, equip 2.
Diana.
Again, that has to be relevant to Final Fantasy in some way. Someone who is a diehard can yell at me in the comments.
I am sure that Diana is a wizard.
Sure. Equip 2. It has equip 2. I don't know why it doesn't. It has equip 2. Maybe this little creature is Diana.
Sure, it can be Diana.
Creature
I don't know.
has equip 2.
Don't tell me in the comments. I
Now,
don't care.
The reason this card is good
Yeah.
is because whenever you cast a non-creature spell and whenever you draw your third card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature.
Yeah. This card goes in as a prowess,
Instantly.
and it is a non-creature spell.
It's a good card.
It's a good card.
It's a very... Now, there are ways in which this is a bit more of a sink than Corey Steelcutter, because this card only makes one extra creature. It's like because it's like the 4 Mirrodin creatures. It only makes one colorless hero creature token. It does not make more of them the more that you activate the abilities, like Flurry for Corey Steelcutter, which can just keep making you more and more 1/1 white monk creatures with prowess. But the static ability alone, I think, makes this card an absolute force.
The card that I'm kind of associating this with is Sprite Dragon, which is a blue and a red for a flying haste 1/1. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And I think this is quite a bit better. I think it's better because it is a non-creature spell itself for all your prowess creatures. I think it hits on an angle that is kind of unique in that it goes tall, where this Corey Steelcutter wants to go wide. And I think it lends itself kind of well to the game plan that the deck has kind of already moved to, which is to be a little bit slower with the Drake Catchers, to really be able to capitalize on your stock-ups and your Storm Chasers talents, and occasionally your one this town ain't big enough. Yeah, the fact that if they kill the token, you can just equip this to whatever other token you have lying around and start it all again, I think is really, really strong. And I think it is slow, and I think it will have to take the place of the more explosive creatures like Slick Shot Show Off. But that's kind of already happening already. I was wrong. This card's great.
Additionally, artifacts are still difficult to interact with.
Play a Braid.
We've got Braid, spoilers, we've got Suplex coming up. We've
Play
got
Temporary Lockdown.
Spoiler, we've got Ultima coming up as well, temporary lockdown. But again, this is another equipment that forces your opponent to lose out on spells that may benefit their game plan better to slow your game plan down. This is a good card. I am really interested to see. I think it fits into Corey Steelcutter. Is it prowess decks? I'm not sure. This is something that to me would be like 2 in the main.
Sure. What Drake Hatcher is now.
Yes, this is something that's 2 in the main to me. I don't think this is a 4 of in the main in a Corey Steelcutter deck, and it's obviously it is not good enough to replace Corey Steelcutter.
No, Jesus, no. No card in Standard currently is good enough to replace Corey Steelcutter.
There's no card.
This message is not sponsored.
Unless there was a card that was printed that says destroy target Corey Steelcutter.
I'd be into that. 0 mana, instant, colorless, destroy target Corey Steelcutter.
Would be very funny.
You may play any number of this card in your deck.
Would be very funny.
Have some interesting ad nauseum implications. But anyway.
I think this card is really good.
Yep.
I think this, but again, a card that very luckily, if it was 3 mana, I don't think it would be playable. But if it was 3 mana, it would dodge temporary lockdown, but I don't think it would be good enough at 3 mana.
Yep, agreed.
The format is too quick, too fast. It moves on.
I think this might barely be good enough at 2 mana, but I think it is barely.
Hey Standard friends, this is Editing Kira from the future. I've had to cut this episode short as we talked for ages about Final Fantasy cards, so I've split this episode up into 2 parts, and part 2 will be coming out on Friday later this week. Thank you so much for joining us. New episodes release Mondays and this week on Friday. at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can keep up with all of our releases at Raise MTG across all social media platforms. You can find myself at Kira Bobira and Maya at Maya MTG. A huge thank you to the State Library of Victoria for the ongoing use of their space. And for today's episode, I am a 6-mana instant, and since it's my turn, this spell costs 4 less to cast.